Hello and welcome back to another episode of Our Generation On Air. My name is Alex Bullimore, and this week I'm joined by Dan Lambert.
Hello.
Hello, just Dan this week. No, everyone else presumably had better things to do. So we just have two games to talk about. The silencing of Millwall last night, and then we will look forward to our game against Stoke on Saturday. First, the match against Millwall, which means that QPR are now unbeaten in 6 games when a change of monarch has taken place in Britain. What a stat that is, Dan. How important that is to the general sort of feel around the club, obviously. And was it just a good game to enjoy yesterday?
Yeah, it was a good game. A very unique stat. I must admit, I did see that the other day, especially after I think there was another stat about being under the reign of the Queen. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a few jokey bits about that. Obviously, with our name. But no, in terms of the game, great game. First clean sheet of the season and a good away win.
Yeah, the other stat, kind of stat. I'm not sure how sort of. I don't think that this is really a metric you can go off, but I think Clive in his preview for the match mentioned that QPR always seem to win when there's like some sort of national tragedy. So like we won after 9/11 and stuff like that by
Oh,
beating Port Vale and 4-0 or something. So, obviously when the Queen passed away, of course QPR were going to go on and win because that's apparently the one thing that we can do. Anyway, team news. All the D's got left out. Dykes, Dazelle and Dickey for various reasons. Dickey, we believe, injured. I don't know. Has he
yeah,
talked about that?
ankle injury. Bill said after the game he had to keep it under wraps. Probably the first time he's done that so far at the club. But I think he said that it's not too big of a worry because he'll be back soon.
Lovely stuff. I guess if there's ever time to get an injury, it's 1 week before the international break where everyone's going to have a week off. And when your other centre back is on the verge of recovery. So, if there was ever a time to pull up injured, it would be now. And because of that, Tim, Rogan, Roberts, and Balogun all came into the side. So let's talk. Let's start with the two, not debutants, because they did feature against Swansea, both of them. But how did you think that the two new boys fared last night?
I think both of them were decent. I thought Balogun. We'll start off with him. I thought he looked quite assured as a centre back. Obviously, I had no Rangers fan that I spoke to about him, and he said that he's quite decent in possession, quite mobile, and had decent pace about him. You definitely saw that kind of skill set in him. I mean, in possession, there wasn't too much to note really. I think he was decent carrying the ball from defence, bit like what Dickey does. Probably not the same in terms of ball progression, in terms of passing, but he looked comfortable. Don't really think Millwall tested us that much all game, so
No,
it's probably tougher test for him. But in terms of a debut, it was assured. I thought.
I think
Go on, sorry.
the other thing as well, it never felt like they were kind of they weren't putting our back four under pressure. A lot they weren't. They're not really a pressing side, obviously. So there wasn't going to be. You're going to have time on the ball a lot more than you might have in other games.
Yeah, I'd say that they didn't. I mean, even towards the second half, they were going a bit more direct, a few more long balls over the top, and even those didn't. I mean, they didn't have bundles of pace in their attack. I think it was Fleming, Bradshaw, and I can't remember the name of the other guy. But yeah, they didn't really have bundles of pace to threaten our back line, and I'd have been interested to see have we played more of a high line, but obviously we played a bit more of a mid block last night, and it kind of suited particularly Dunn, who I thought had a good game. And both of them looked quite assured. But in terms of Aerobanum, I think that's how you say it correctly. I've been working on it. I thought it was a mixed debut. I thought he looked good physically for the level. He didn't really jump out of challenges, or he looked quite tenacious in his tackle. I thought the only thing for me, he looked a bit. I don't know if it's just the way he plays, but he looks a bit lethargic about the way he does things. Maybe that's just his general body language. And I'd like to see him progress the ball a bit more. I thought we saw against Swansea a bit of a cameo. He looked quite good in his passing range, but I think that's something to work on. But I think what's interesting is he put him in a different role to probably what I'd suspect he plays long term. I think he's more of a field type, someone that could sit in, kind of control the game from there, and kind of maybe progress the ball here and there. But obviously, he's playing in that Dezelle role, the kind of right side 8. So it was an interesting debut, but I think there's probably a lot more to come from him, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't sort of overly impressed with the boy from Villa. I think there's, obvious. He's still got to learn a hell of a lot. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on loan with us. Aston Villa would probably be having him coming off the bench more often than not in games if he was any more closer to a finished article than what he is right now. So I wasn't it wasn't, I'm not saying like it was worrying or anything like that. I just don't think it was sort of like a performance that really wowed me or anything. The centre backs, yeah, I thought they were pretty decent. There's been a case made online and Twitter for in that sort of game, you would need someone a bit more like Dunn and Balogun rather than Dickie and Clark Salter. I mean, I haven't actually seen much of Clark Salter play, but I don't feel like that's as much of a valid sort of point that we can make about our backline anymore, considering, in the past it was probably someone like Grant Hall or Johan Barbe, players that, Barbe in particular, maybe towards the end of his career of QPR, was a lot tougher and a lot more physical. But at the start, he said, he's not there to head balls away. He's there to sort of pass out from the back and stuff like that. Dickie's not soft when it comes to competing in the air, and I can't imagine that Clark Salter is either.
No, I'd agree on that. I think you got to be careful with rotating your centre backs too much as well, because that's our first clean sheet granted, and we've had 3 centre back partnerships already. Not saying that's the case for.
There's been one sort of centre back partnership that's run throughout the season so far. That's Dunn and Dickie.
Yeah.
JCS and Dickie had one game.
First game Blackburn,
and now we've got Dickie and Balogun. So
Yeah, I just think on the point of rotating centre backs, I think it's fine at times, but I think that's kind of a area of the pitch where you want solidity and you want like a solid partnership that you can have faith in. Obviously, it's great we got competition in that area and we've got depth, but I think at times you do need 2 centre backs that know each other very well and that can play at a consistent rate for the season. Obviously, there's the doubts of injuries with a lot of them, but I think once we see, I think Clark Salter coming in, providing that left-sided balance. Obviously, it's not like a super necessary thing to have, but I think we saw in the first game, building out from the back was a lot cleaner. Even he's a lot more mobile than the majority of our centre backs as well. So I think that we have a blend of centre backs, but I think we've got to be careful how much we rotate them for me.
Yeah, and it wasn't Clark Salter the first signing this summer.
Yeah, I believe so, and one that Bill really likes.
Yeah, so as much as that could just be down to someone was available that sort of fit within what we wanted, but you don't go and make your first signing of the summer. Usually the first signing of the summer is a real important target, isn't it? It's someone that you desperately want. It's not a squad player, and I'd expect him to come back into the side. Maybe not for the Stoke game, but I don't think.
Yeah, I think that might be a bit too early, but I think
yeah.
Bristol City are definitely Reading. I think he'll be in there for me.
Yeah. So let's move forward then from the sort of team selection and that, and move on to 2 more sort of newish signings, the fullbacks, because they were brilliant yet again. Dan, Is this what it's like to have good fullbacks? Because I actually really like it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was very good. I, Powell in particular, obviously, I don't really want to single out either of them because they were both great. But Powell, I thought, definitely his best performance of the season by far. Millwall was swinging a lot of crosses in first and second half, and he was just getting on the end of them. I mean, I don't know how, I can't remember how tall he is, but I think he's one of the smallest players on the pitch, and he was winning them, flicking them on, tenacious in the tackles. Didn't really go forward as much because obviously on the other side, Laird was quite high, but I was really impressed with Powell, and then Laird in both boxes as well. The defensive our own box, he made that clearance towards the end of the game that could have been a decisive moment potentially, and he's just so good going forward. I mean, I've said this before, I don't know how we quite managed to secure him, but it's probably up there with our signing of the summer for me.
Absolutely. I mean, Laird is just a ridiculous talent. I just turned around to my dad last night when we were watching the game and just like, he shouldn't be playing for us. Like, it's actually,
No.
it's ridiculous that he is. And I don't want Man United to realise because they're a lot, I feel like with Ten Hag there, they're a lot more, they're getting closer to being well run ever so slightly, like sort of moving in the right sort of direction. And I don't know, I can't say whether for sure he would be in his plans or not. I think he went on preseason tour with them and he's had Europa League minutes. So obviously he's someone that is relatively highly thought of there. Otherwise they would have probably got rid of him last season on a permanent basis after that sort of disastrous Bournemouth loan. But my God, I hope they don't realise what they've done in giving him to us and they just let him stay at Loftus Road for the season. Because if he does, there's, I don't want to slag off Kakai, but the drop down in quality between them two. I mean,
Huge.
it's huge. Kakai is
It is
arguably
huge. You
bottom
can say
end
it's
championship player. You've got a potential Premier League player starting for us.
well, not even that. There's just a massive. I've said this before. It's a massive. As much, regardless of quality, Kakai does not suit the system as much as Ethan led, and you got a player that I don't know is average at the level in a system that doesn't really suit him. You're not going to stand out in our side. Led's brilliant. I think I can't see. I don't want to jinx it, but I can't see him being recalled for the sake of his development because it makes no sense. He's playing games. He can go on to get easily 10 plus assists, in my opinion. Yeah, I was surprised. No one. I think Watford were after him. I wasn't. I was surprised that no one in the top end of the championship. Going to.
Dan, we are in the top end of the
No,
championship.
yeah, but like, all right, teams fighting for the top two. I was surprised they didn't go in for him. But no, I think we just got to enjoy him while we can because by the end of the season, unfortunately, he's not going to be our player.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking at it last season, and unfortunately, he had a lot of injuries. But we looked at sort of someone like Sam McCallum and just thought, like, we've got him for a season, and we're going to enjoy it. And he was obviously a very good player, but again, the difference between McCallum and Laird, again, it is something else. So delighted that we've got him. Another fantastic performance from both of the fullbacks ticked off. And like you said about Powell, tenacious is absolutely the right word because every question that was asked of him, he answered it, no problem. In a game that perhaps, in the past, someone of that size or just you wouldn't fancy them, basically. You would be thinking of someone more of like Lee Wallace, who probably played for us last season in that position, in that game, would have been better suited to that game. But Powell, being the modern fullback, just was fantastic yesterday, and long may that continue. Whilst we've mentioned it a few times, let's just touch on it a little bit more. Millwall obviously tried to go a lot more direct, long ball, but their passing last night in general was just atrocious. They couldn't string a pass together really a lot of the time. When they tried to switch the play, when they tried any sort of long ball, most of the time it went out for a corner, not a corner, goal kick, go out for a throw in or something like that. It was, like clearly aside not creating much, missing a player who obviously was quite a few steps above him in Jed Wallace. And they just weren't very good, were they? It was just a very boring team to watch, and I can't believe that there's some sort of people suggesting they might be sort of outside playoff contenders.
Yeah, I think I probably had Millwall down this season as probably realistically mid table. I thought the like you say, the loss of Jeb Wallace was a big one. I was surprised slightly by their performance. I thought in the 11 they had enough ball players to kind of string passes together. I mean, you look at Callum Styles; he's always impressed me whenever we've played him. I think they had George. It was Saville in the midfield, wasn't it?
They brought
And
on
they had
Honeyman in the second half.
yeah, they brought on Honeyman. I thought their best player was probably Fleming for me. I thought he was. I mean, he had that chance at the end where it hit the crossbar. They didn't really have any standouts, like you say, but I thought the game as a whole, it was quite. The first half, particularly, it was quite fast. It played at a fast tempo, and it was quite chaotic at times in the middle of the park. A bit from our end, but I thought majority from their side. But yeah, they didn't really test us, and like we said last week, they lack goals badly. You don't look at their team and think they're gonna probably put more than one or two past your side, if that.
Right. Well, the segues are just working perfectly here. You say they can't score goals. We can, fortunately. Well, some of our players can. Let's start with Chris Willock. Again, he kind of pops up with this, I wouldn't say incredible strike, but a very good and tidy finish from the edge of the box. I don't want to get sort of too football cliches here, but an incredible strike has to leave the ground for me. It didn't get off the ground. It was a placed finish, wasn't it? This wasn't
Yeah,
a wonder strike. This wasn't a screamer. It can't be a screamer because it didn't get off the ground.
no. It was definitely that. I thought there was quite there was a bit of finesse on the strike because it kind of bent round the keeper slightly and into the bottom right hand corner. I thought the finish was good, but I thought the build up play before that was excellent for me. Obviously, it went around a lot of our players, but I thought there was a moment where Johansson dropped as like one of the wide centre mids into that fullback area, and then he kind of makes an out swim run to kind of draw Millwall inside, and that allows Powell to kind of play it to Tyler Roberts, who kind of like to drop out all game, and then that kind of started it, and then obviously it plays to Chair plays to Willock, and then he lets it roll across his body. So it was a good goal from general build up, to be fair, and the finish tops it off, and that kind of got us going. I felt. I mean, we played pretty decently majority of the game, but I thought after that game we kind of got up for the game a little bit more. I thought, and it helped us in the end.
Yeah, a very tidy finish in the end. But what do you think about his whole sort of performance across it wasn't 90 minutes. I can't remember how long exactly he played, but I never thought that he was sort of involved in the game too much.
Is this
And
Willock?
to be honest,
Yeah,
like if he keeps on putting in these performances where maybe he's not involved in the game a lot, but then has these moments of quality, kind of saw this sort of to a certain extent, Chair doing the same thing a few games earlier in the season. Sunderland in particular, he wasn't brilliant, but then he comes up with the free kick and the cross to drag us back into that game. But Willock he's there and he's scoring goals. Scoring goals that will get him noticed, which in the long run is good for the club. And he's winning us games, but not sort of. He's not driving us on. It's Chair that's driving us on at the moment.
no, I'd agree. I thought I was speaking to my mates beside me at the game. We were saying that Willock was a bit off the pace. It looked a little bit off the pace yesterday compared to what we know him to be. Obviously, like you say, he pops up with the moment. So I thought he looked all right with physically for the test. He looked like he was able to hold players off with the ball, but I don't know. He didn't really look to change the direction of the game at times. He kind of slowed it down, and then that allowed them to get men behind the ball. And as we know, when they sit deep and defend, that's probably when Millwall are at their best. But no, him and Chair pop up in the right moments, and you look at the game; it was fairly even, both sides in terms of chances created. But we kind of took it with the two key moments, and that hasn't really been what we've been about this season. We've kind of rued these missed chances. But it's nice to see it fall our way.
And let's look at the second goal then. And this is, for me, this goal was a hell of a lot more satisfying than another goal from the edge of the box, because this, I hope, means that they're, really working on stuff on the training ground. There's a smartness there. There's an awareness. It's just really nicely done, isn't it? The part chairs awake to the situation. They draw the man across to place Stefan onside, and he's in the right place, and he coolly slots it away. I mean, there's just panic from Millwall. There's one guy that goes sliding across, and he's still in all that chaos, finds a bottom corner on the other side of the goal. It's a fantastic finish, and it's a fantastic goal.
Yeah, the composure from Johansson was great. I mean, I'd be interested to know how much they worked on that specific set piece. I think as much as you can work on it, I think Che used his common sense, but basically they were so unsettled. They were wandering back into position that he kind of pounced at the opportunity.
I don't think it was a sort of specific move targeted at Millwall, is it?
I know you're saying.
It must be a sort of like that they get him on the training ground and they sort of say, right, in this sort of situation where you've got that they're 1-0 down, perhaps, and they're not quite aware to what's happening, you need to be looking to do this. You need to be looking to do that. It's more of a sort of generic thing that you can use against all teams, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think hopefully that puts a little bit of not criticism, but the set piece coach he doesn't. I don't want to say criticism, but there's been a little bit of kind of jokes around. Is he actually doing stuff? I've seen people say, we're not actually scoring many at the minute from set pieces, but I think we're still up there in terms of the most goals scored in the league from attacking set pieces. I think even without that goal, you see some of the set routines and how frequently we change it up. We look a much dangerous team from set pieces, but in that specific moment, it was nice to see us kind of take advantage of Millwall's unsettled defence, and it was a great finish, like you say.
A word then on the sort of general form of Stefan Johansson. He's been a different player to the one we saw at the back end of last season, and just proving what a good player he really is, even at this age.
Yeah,
we can see some players sort of go, understandably, you get to a certain age and your performances start to drop off, but his intensity and how long he can carry it on throughout the season is going to be a question and important, but his intensity is really impressive at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that probably helps with the change in role between him and Field. Obviously now Field start of the season was more of an 8, now he's a 6, and then roles reversed with Johansson. The whole game kind of epitomised his off the ball work when he set up the 2 goals with the turnovers. And like you said yesterday, he showed his energy. I think it also helps compared to last season. He's playing in a midfield 3 rather than a 2, which is a lot less leg work for him. And as much as people were easily slating him off, I don't think people took into context the difference in system that he's playing now than he did last year. I don't think
greatest respect, he was asked to do a lot in that midfield too, because Field just didn't. Field tackled and won the ball back, and that's obviously very important, and you need that. But it wasn't like Field was then really progressive with the ball. It was sort of, you have to give it then to Johansson, and there was a slight flaw there within the two, because you needed both of them to sort of chip in and help each other.
Oh yeah, and I think that's. I mean, not everyone thinks like that, but you've got to take the context behind reasons players don't do well in certain situations. And I think he was such an easy scapegoat last year. We even said it the whole of last season that we weren't saying he was brilliant, but we were easily we weren't his worst critics by far. We kind of backed him at points. But no, I think it's great to see him playing well. It can only be good for his confidence, and as he's the captain, it's kind of, he can breed that confidence, if you like.
Yeah, and he's getting into the sort of situations where he was, getting closer and closer to scoring. Obviously, you got the toe end of his boot on the ball across for Adoma, against Watford, which
That's it. Yeah.
very clearly nearly became his goal. Ethan Laird's goal against Hull could have quite easily been his goal as well, making those sort of late-ish runs into the box through the
He's an
middle.
intelligent footballer. People don't realise that.
Yeah,
He's won countless championships with Fulham. He's played for Celtic. I think he's played in Europe. He's not an idiot.
yeah.
He knows what he's doing, and I'm sure he's one of the more intelligent players, and experience wise as well, in our squad. So he knows what he's doing, and he'll take anything on board from what Bill wants him to do.
Yeah, so let's have a look then at a topic that I know you're going to love. And it was brought up by Bill in, I can't quite remember what press conference it was, but the fact that XG for us is quite low per game. So,
Yeah.
We've got this good start to the season, and of course, we're delighted to be in the position that we are. We're very close to the playoffs on points and stuff like that, and we've got positive goal difference. Yeah, fantastic. Problem is, most of our goals have come from the edge of the box, outside the box. Very good finishes, fantastic moments in the moment, but something that isn't achievable across such a long season. Eventually, that is going to fade away, and because it's a hard thing to do, isn't it? You can't purely score goals like that. So, what is the problem that you think we have at the moment with scoring the slightly more, the slightly more boring goals than, trying to create something, or just trying to create more? I don't know. Like, what is the problem with the low XG, and how can we solve that?
Well, I think the question mark. I mean, XG. I like it. It definitely has its flaws. I'll put that in before I answer the question. But I think it just generally gives you a sense of the quality of chance you're creating, because anyone can say we've had 12 shots, 3 on target. Well, what does that mean? Because the 3 on target could be 3 pot shots from 40 yards. So it kind of gives you a probability of the chance of you scoring from a certain location. But obviously, a lot of our goals, like the whole game, Willock and Cher scoring worldies. Even Sunderland, it was a direct free kick and then set Dieng off a corner. I don't think that's going to happen very often on Dieng's part. But it just over a season, for me, it'd be unsustainable on the basis that regardless of how much form Cher and Willock are on, their finishing over their career is not going to be it's not prolific, is it? You don't consider Cher and Willock prolific finishers. I think there was a stat.
Attacking midfielders just rarely get that many goals. Like, they'll lay on quite a few, but they won't score many themselves.
That's true.
They won't score the same quality of or quantity of goals as a striker would.
I think I saw someone say on Twitter yesterday that Willock scored all of 100% shot conversion rate. I'd need to double check that, but that in itself is not going to continue over the course of a season. He's not going to be putting away every single shot he's taken, or at least if it was in the high 90s or whatever, that wouldn't carry on over a season. So I think there will be some sort of regression. That's going to be natural, but I think in general, I think the flip side to the XG argument is that take the games against Rotherham and I think Blackpool. Ethan Laird got in some decent positions, attacked the byline, and then kind of cut it back. But because no one got
the XG for Blackpool. Oh no, wait, I do. Blackpool 0.81 XG, Rotherham 1.06.
In terms of that,
90 minutes.
The when Laird produced a lot of those cutbacks, no one got on the end of them. So, and if no one gets on the end of them, the XG isn't recorded. So you could argue that if Dykes or whoever got on the end of that and the keeper saved it or whatever, the XG would be a lot higher. So there's a lot of the pros and cons to the whole XG argument. But I just think in general, we need to be creating better chances. The quantity is all right for me. We're creating on average probably about 13, 14 at least. But it's just the quality, because a lot of the games where the XG compared to the amount of chances we're creating is low.
Yeah, we've mentioned it many a time in the past that we can play some lovely football into the sort of final third, but so many times does the cross go wrong, regardless of who's putting the cross in. So that's obviously a big issue with any sort of XG as well, because like you said, if the ball doesn't actually land at a striker's feet or someone's feet and it doesn't go, if the shot doesn't happen, then the XG isn't registered. The other thing then to ask about this would be, you've got Dykes who's been in bad form at the moment, and then you've got Roberts who's come in and played in an attacking role last night, but he drifted wide quite a bit. He didn't stay as a striker the whole time, which is, I guess, to be understood as that's kind of the way he plays. He's more of a sort of chair / Willock role of player rather than an out and out striker. He's just going to stay down the middle, and of course, him being out wide did contribute to the first goal.
The Willock goal.
But his finishing in the first half, he had a clear chance and he managed to send it wide, which really it should have been 1-0. I'm not saying that Dykes scores that, but I'm certainly saying that if Dykes misses that, then he would be crucified. At least there'd be calls for crucifixion. That is an issue as well, surely. If Dykes isn't going to be scoring goals, then we aren't going to end up, because he's going to play again as our striker at some point throughout the season, and he's going to start games.
The number 9, that's an issue in itself, and that's probably where the whole conversation gets a little bit overcomplicated. I think the thing is, the argument for me is we create better quality chances and more of them. The bigger probability the likes of Dykes and Roberts are going to be able to score these chances, rather than giving them, I don't know, a low quality chance and expecting them to produce a miracle. I just think that we all know we haven't got clinical strikers, and to get a clinical striker, you have to pay in excess of loads of millions of pounds. So I think the better we create these chances, the more chance that our strikers can finish them. Obviously, it's not always going to work like that, but it can be at times a game of probability for me.
Yeah. Well, regardless, it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience to actually watch us win away at Millwall. It's normally a place where I assume that we lose or draw 1-1. I think I've been there once, and I think we drew 2-2 in the season that we went up via the playoffs. So I hated watching it on the TV, not the game, just hated having to see Millwall. But apart from that, a thoroughly enjoyable experience. Right then, now that we've dissected everything from Millwall, let's move on to the last game before the international break. Stoke at home. It has been confirmed it's going ahead. Thank God for that. Otherwise, we really would have been in trouble. Obviously, they've recently sacked Michael O'Neill to take Alex Neil from Sunderland, which, of course, is a move that went down well up in Sunderland. Adding to the irony, it was a defeat to Sunderland that sealed Michael O'Neill's fate. It was a 1-0 loss or something like that. But since the change, they've only lost once in 4 games, losing 2-1 to Reading. And, I keep seeing Reading popping up on the fixtures of teams that we've been playing, and they're a real enigma for me, Reading, because they've been thrashed a couple of times, and yet they're still up there, and they're still beating teams. And then obviously last night they lost 3-0 to Sunderland.
Yeah, I think when
we don't want to make this too much about Reading, but they are a bit weird, aren't they?
Yeah, I saw them the week before last, and I think they were second in the league, but they had a negative goal difference because they lost 2 times 4-0, like you said, but they've won by 1 goal each game. In terms of Stoke, though, I think it was a very good appointment, Alex Neil. I quite like him as a manager. He's tactically flexible. I caught the Reading game. It was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? a bit of a weird game. They've got a lot of injuries at the minute. So he's playing a kind of aggressive back three system, but I think they had Jacob Brown, who's normally known for being a centre forward. He was playing like right wing back. They got a lot of key players out. Obviously, Harry Souttar's got a long term injury. But no, they won 3-0 in the week against Hull, I think it was. And from I think I listened to his press conference, and he said it was a good performance, and that's kind of what he wants them to be. Obviously, you know what an Alex Neil kind of side wants to be. It's aggressive, front-footed. We saw against Sunderland, he pretty much scored us in the first half. Obviously, we had injuries and that, but I thought tactically he got the game spot on. And if it wasn't for 2 bits of quality in the final 5 minutes, they could have easily won. I thought it's going to be a tough game, but we've got a bit of confidence after the win, so it should be a good game.
So yeah, I guess this is a different sort of QPR that's going to be facing them to the side that faced Sunderland when he was there. But with everything that's happened since then, obviously, he's changed jobs. Would you give us a better chance of bettering him this time, or do you reckon that he's going to execute his tactics well again?
Yeah, I think we've got a slightly better chance in the sense that they got a lot of injuries, and personnel-wise, he's kind of been forced to. I say been forced to hand. He chose to take the job, but he's kind of been. He came in. I think it was a couple of days before the window ended. He hasn't really had a chance to bring in his players, and I think they got. I mean, Aidan Flint is their centre half, for example. Very good aerially, and I'm sure we'll touch on it in a minute. They've scored 3 goals from set pieces in the last 2 games. One of which, the Reading goal, they used him quite well as a threat. But in terms of build up and kind of mobility, he really lacks in that sense. He's a very typical Championship centre half for his aerial dominance, but they've got players in there kind of square pegs in round holes, if that makes sense. I mean, if you look at that Sunderland side, we played Jack Clark, Stewart, Ellis Sims, Pritchard. It's a very good side for this division, in my opinion. And I think this Stoke squad is slightly worse than that, but they might have the bounce of a new manager and a win in midweek.
Yeah, another good win, 3-0 against Hull, which, prior to the game that they played us, Hull were looking a decent side on a decent run. So, that's another good win for them. I have to confess, I had a look at their top goal scorers, and I didn't really recognise many of the names. I know you got DiMaggio, Wright Phillips there, which is a recognisable name because of 2 reasons, and then you've also got the boy you've just mentioned, who's playing at right wing back.
Jacob Brown.
Jacob Brown. There you go.
They got a lot of strikers in that squad. They got Liam Delap, who's come from City, obviously the links. Dwight Gale, well known for being a prolific scorer at this level, but didn't really have game time for 2 years, so he might be a little bit rusty at this level. Yeah, they've got quite a lot of attacking players. I like Lewis Baker from who was at Chelsea for a long, long time. In their puppy farm, as Nick London called it. He's a good player, and I like Josh Tymon as well. So they've got some decent quality, and like I said before, Alex Neil's a good tactician at this level, so I won't put it past him to kind of do one on us. But I think going into this game, we should have a real opportunity at, especially that back three. I don't really rate their back three all too much. I think we can have a go at them.
Dwight Gale there, is there a more sort of, he does a good job sort of striker out there, or he would do a good job for us sort of striker?
I mean, admittedly, I haven't watched him at all this season. I haven't watched him for years, to be honest. I think, was it West? It must have been like West Brom. He's like on loan his last season, scoring. I think it was like 20. It was under Darren Moore.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying. I mean, now we're saying this, it wouldn't surprise me if he scored on the weekend. But I'm sure we can nullify him. I'm sure he's lost a bit of pace since he was kind of firing on all cylinders. But be interesting to see him.
So then what would you do from our point of view? Would you keep the same 11 or would you tinker ever so slightly?
I was thinking about this earlier because I was tempted to just easily say we should keep it unchanged, but we saw recently that I know it was different in terms of 3 games in a row, but fatigue was a big thing or a factor. I think I wouldn't be against keeping the same 11, but I think at the same time you might look to maybe freshen up a little bit. You look at Balogun and Roberts. I know there's an international break coming, but can we be sure that they're match fit enough to play at least another go again and play another 60 minimum? I suppose the midfield you could freshen up. I think the thing, obviously there's power, isn't there? Has he got cramp, or did he have did he get
I'm not
cramp?
quite sure. He just kind of went off like very late on in the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he might make 1 or 2 changes. I think he might learn from that Swansea game where I think he held his hands up and said he kind of went a little bit too far with another unchanged side. But I think
The
also you
difference
got
is though that Swansea game was preluded by the Hull match, wasn't it? Was it
yeah,
Hull? And
yeah,
Hull was it was a very intense performance from us. There was a lot more sort of energy. They didn't. Not saying that they just walked it into the back of the net last night, but it didn't. Apart from the opening salvo of the game, there wasn't much. It wasn't a really energetic match, was it? It wasn't like Chair was all over the place pressing, or maybe it was. Maybe it's something that you can pick up a lot easier in the stadium. But sort of, it just didn't feel like there was as much going on.
I know what you're saying. I think parts of it was quick. The game. I think the fullbacks probably exerted the most energy in terms of getting up and down because led power after it. Yet I think he went down with cramp, so you can kind of understand why he did because he was up and down. Same with Laird. I just don't know. I think also in this division, you've also got to, as well as what manage the fatigue levels, you've got to react to your opposition. I think I remember doing the piece on the Sunderland game, and an Alex Neil side likes to like mark you man for man all over the pitch, and in those kind of situations, you need a team that's athletic and can run for 90 minutes tracking a man, and also kind of have the ball playing ability to kind of break those marking movements, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to think of a game. I think it might have been last season. Sheffield United man marked us, and it was only Chair who was kind of creating the space and movement. We kind of need those kind of players, like maybe like I'd say a Dazelle, but then does he really have the physical capabilities to keep up for 90 minutes? So it'd be interesting to see. I think he's going to definitely stick with the majority, maybe change 1 or 2, but I'd be surprised if he changed more than 2.
Right. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention about Stoke before we sign off this evening?
Don't think no, don't think so. Actually, no. The one last thing would be I'd be interested to see if Stoke kind of press us quite high. Obviously, we haven't really got the choice with centre backs, but Balogun looks decent in possession. Dunn isn't great in possession, like we saw against Swansea. Whether they kind of manipulate those two a little bit more compared to what Millwall did, but that's the only other real thing I have to say.
Okay, so with that brings to an end another Our Generation on Air podcast. This week, Sam Taylor, I believe, is writing the column for us in the programme. So if you want to, please give that a go and go and purchase that from one of the vendors around the ground. We don't have any other stuff to plug, do we?
No, not as far as I'm aware.
No. Yeah, so that's it for this week's podcast. Thank you very much for listening. You can follow both of us on Twitter. You can follow Our Generation on that on Twitter. You can subscribe to the podcast through whatever platform it is you're listening to us on right now. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Our Generation on Air. All the episodes go up there, and maybe a few other things if you keep an eye on it and subscribe and stuff. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on your feeds throughout the international break, because even though there isn't anything to talk about, we're not necessarily going to be quiet. So there is going to be something hopefully going up on there very soon. So thank you very much for listening once again. And until next time, come on, you Arse.